The train rattled westward across County Clare, its windows flickering with peat bogs, stone walls, and the restless shift of Atlantic clouds. I watched the landscape the way a folklorist always does to alert for patterns. A hawthorn tree standing alone in a field, a cross slab half hidden in gorse, a ring fort that locals mutter about but never enter. Those were my compass points, coordinates on the old map that hovers behind Ireland's modern veneer. When the conductor announced Kilcara Junction, I gathered my satchel, heavy with notebooks, field recorder, and a slim volume of Lady Gregory's Visions and Beliefs. The rest of the passengers kept their heads down, as though the name itself were a cold wind. Kilcara had once been known for singers. Old 78 RPM discs, recorded in the 1926, preserved their lilting ornamentations. Archives held ballads collected by Singy and Bunting. But for the past 3 winters, letters had arrived at my department, scrawled in fading ink. The songs are turning to dust. Come if you can. No signature. They smelled faintly of turf smoke and salt. I had delayed until word came that the church choir now mouthed hymns in silence, that infants cried without sound, that even the crows flapped mutely above the cliffs. A village can survive hunger, exile, even plague. When its voice is taken, the soul follows. So I left Dublin, following the rail line's slow heartbeat into the west, where myths still walk like dusk-tinted cattle along the Borans. Outside the station, a single cart waited, harnessed to a skewbald pony. The driver held a placard. Prof N. Byrne. Call me Neve, I said, climbing aboard. Your Padraig? The driver shook his head, pointing to his throat. Mute. Then he handed me a note written in a delicate, almost calligraphic hand. Welcome. I am Padraig's uncle, Fionn Daly. Padraig will bring you to my workshop. We have much to do and little time before the feast of St. Bridget. No signature, but the ink carried a faint glimmer, as though moonlight had soaked into it. I traced the letters, felt a prickle at the base of my skull. Iron-free ink, oak gall mixed with foxglove juice. Old craft. The cart rolled through the outskirts of Kilcara. Curtains twitched, yet no children called, no dog barked. Even the sea, visible in a blue gash between dunes, seemed to heave in silence. Only the clop of hooves and the creak of leather filled the air. I tried humming an air Unapan, but the melody faltered, as if the air itself swallowed sound. Padraig turned up a lane tunneled by alder and hazel until we reached a stone cottage crouched beside a stream. Wind chimes of bleached bone hung under the eaves. Their motion promised sound. None came. Padraig urged me toward the door, then clicked the pony onward toward the barn. Inside, the cottage smelled of linseed, sheep's grease, and a sharper note. Resin of yew, maybe. The room was dim except for a hearth fire and dozens of small globes of light drifting near the rafters. Each no bigger than a wren's egg. They pulsed like living things, tinting the shadows amber and jade. A man stood at a bench, planing a curved piece of wood. He was tall, gray-haired, his shoulders corded from years of labor. He wore no ear protection, no apron, just a shirt rolled to the elbows, exposing a silver bracelet shaped like a twisted vine. He did not look up until he set the plane aside. Then, wiping dust from his hands, he faced me with eyes the color of tidal pools. I'm Fionn Daly, he said. Thank you for answering. Those lights, I began. They're only interested in music. His voice carried a gentle West Coast lilt. When there was sound, they stayed hidden. Now they keep company with what's yet possible. He gestured to the half-finished harp on the bench. I make instruments, or used to. Hard to craft a voice for others when my neighbors have none. Tell me what happened. He poured tea, the splash of liquid oddly loud in the hush. The lights drifted lower as though eavesdropping. 3 winters passed, Fionn said. The parish council voted to fell the fairy fort in the North Field raising ground for a wind turbine. I warned them the Sieg would take vengeance. They laughed. On Imbolc, the fort was bulldozed. That night, the singing stopped. One by one, throats closed. You feel it, I'd wager. The air eats sound, I nodded. The banshee of silence, a devouring dampening. Fion's brows lifted. You name it well. I've tried lures, chanted blessings, iron nails, bowls of milk. Nothing stirs them. But my harps still call the lights. He paused, eyes on the glowing motes. I think the fort's guardian took more than song. It took the contract of breath. The only thing it might heed now is a duet. Human craft joined with otherworld light. He opened a vellum folio on the table. Inside lay a schematic, a harp strung not with gut but with ribbons of light. Notes in Ogham labeled each pillar. Beneath, a stanza in medieval Gallic. Only the unsung shall summon / what silence stole / weaving dawn from broken throats. The unsung, I asked. You, perhaps, a scholar of stories who hasn't spoken in song. He tapped his chest. And me, I craft voices but own none of my own. But you speak, I protested. Fionn smiled, rueful. Words, aye, but my singing voice left after a fever when I was 8. I can't carry a tune above a whisper. Padric he lost speech entire last Imbolc, so I carve where I cannot sing. The lights listen. He pointed to the motes. At his gesture they coalesced, forming a delicate arc, the outline of a harp's sound box, before dispersing like dandelion seeds. Goose flesh rippled up my arms. Fairy lights, ta'en sea, were seldom benign, but these felt wistful, even compassionate. I opened my satchel and laid out my tools, field recorder, useless here, graphite pencils, and the fox letters that summoned me. I asked, who wrote these? I did, Fionn admitted. I forged an older hand, thinking academia listens quicker to history's ghosts than to living artisans. Ugh, I laughed, despite the hush. Guilty. Still, I'm here. Outside, dusk thickened. A storm's rumble rolled across the horizon. Silent lightning strobed in purple veins. No thunder followed. The paradox made my bones ache. Fionn stoked the fire. Will you help? We must build a harp that can translate light into resonance. On Imbolc Eve, we'll bring it to the Fort Scar and bargain for Kilkera's voice. I'll help, I said, though dread flickered inside me. But I'll need to know the old names, the runes, the offerings. He poured another cup of tea and began to teach. For 3 days we labored. Fionn's workshop became a cathedral of shavings and glimmers. The new harp's frame he shaped from ancient bog yew gifted by the river 6 summers ago, a felled trunk risen after 9 centuries underwater, dark as midnight bread. Its pillar he inlaid with mother-of-pearl crescents representing the lunar phases. Its neck was notched for 14 strings, 7 pairs, to echo the double helix of voice. My task was to inscribe each string's bridge pin with a charm of release. I chose words from the Carmina Gadelica and fragments of keening recorded before the famine. Because ink would blur on you, I used a stylus of rowan dipped in my own blood mixed with blackberry dye. Fionn did not flinch at that necessity. The sea respects sacrifice. Each night, Padric left silent meals, barley griddle cakes, mussels steamed with dill, a square of barmbrack studded with crystallized fruit. We ate without speech, hungry for flavors that still answered the tongue. Between bites, Fionn scribbled notes on scrapped birch bark, an easier medium than speaking under the watch of listening shadows. Though words remained audible within the cottage, beyond its threshold even laughter faded to gestures. Once, fetching water from the stream, I called to Padric. No sound. He glanced back puzzled until I signed with my hands. Returning inside, my voice returned. Small mercy that left me dizzy. As the harp neared completion, the lights grew brighter, weaving among the strings like bees tasting pollen, tuned by touch, feeling vibration travel through his palms. Unable to pluck a note we could hear, he watched instead the light's reaction. If a filament brightened, the pitch pleased them. If it dimmed, He adjusted the brass levers by a hair. On the eve of Imbolc, snow rang the hills like powdered sugar. We wrapped the harp in burlap and placed it on a creel sled. Podrick led the pony. Fionn carried a lantern of green glass. I bore a brazier filled with juniper, peat, and one coal from Kilcara's communal hearth, kept smoldering in silence all year against this night. The wind off the Atlantic smelled of seaweed and iron. We passed shuttered cottages. Shadows watched from windows, their faces pale masks inside. As we neared the north field, the hedgerows thinned. Where the fairy fort once stood, only a pit remained, ringed by excavator tracks now half erased by grass. Frozen reeds rattled, forming the only natural sound since autumn. We arranged our tools on the bulldozed mound. I set the brazier at the center. Fionn uncovered the harp. It glowed faintly, reflecting aurora from the lights clustering nearby. He signed for me to begin. I took a breath and spoke the opening of Cauned ui Laweri, the great lament Mary O'Connell composed for her murdered husband. My voice trembled, but the words left my lips with shade. They hung in the air a second, then collapsed, shredded by the hush. Panic surged through me. Fionn motioned, "Do not fear." He plucked the lowest string. No audible note followed, yet the lights swarmed, weaving through the harp's column like salmon ascending currents. Where they touched, colors splintered, ruby, viridian, cobalt, the pit filled with silent fireworks. I tried again, this time chanting the refrain of Dualaman. Though my ears caught nothing, pressure vibrated in my chest, resonating with the harp's frame. Light spun upward in a vortex until impossible we heard a faint chiming, like icicles struck with bone spoons. Not sound exactly, more its silhouette knocking against the inside of thought. Podrick approached, carrying a small bronze bowl. Upon a signal from Fionn, he poured its contents, seawater, cow's milk, and a drop of whiskey, at the harp's foot. Offering made, he stepped back. The earth shuddered. A fissure opened where the fort's ring once curved, releasing a pelt of black mist. It congealed into a figure, antlered, tall as a horse, skin the color of sodden bark, a guardian of the sigh, dislocated, angry. No breath stirred its lips, yet a voice cracked inside our skulls. Who dares carry song here? I felt my knees buckle. Fionn steadied me, then faced the entity. He raised the harp so that lights spun along its length. When he plucked 3 strings, the lights funneled into the guardian's chest. Color burrowed through the barkskin like sunrise seeping through bog fog. The guardian howled still without air, and I sensed rage, loss, loneliness intertwined. The fort had been its cradle. Now only machinery tracks scored the mud. Fionn spoke aloud, voice shivering but clear. We bring a new mound, carved of air and sap. Hear its plea. Return the village voice, and we will seed the field with hawthorn, alder, ash, your children. Restore balance. Silence answered like a stone cell. Then the guardian pointed at me. Sing. Alone. The word lanced through bone. My throat felt stuffed with nettles. Leaves rustled though no wind blew, thousands of ghost voices waiting to judge. I closed my eyes, found the first song I ever loved, a lullaby my grandmother crooned while shelling peas. Bia im ais. I began softly, shaping each vowel like a bead. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, I heard myself, thin, distant, as though carried on phone wires strung over the Atlantic. I sang louder. The lights responded, braiding around my shoulders, pulsing with my breathing. When the melody reached its descent, Fionn joined, not singing, but plucking. Though no note reached my ears, each contact set the lights strobing. The guardian watched, chin lifted, antlers brushing unseen ceilings. On the final cadence, I held the last note. Letting breath bleed out until lungs ached, the lights exploded outward. Meteors showering across the field, raining into that black wound where the fort had been. Suddenly, Sound rushed back like tide. Wind roared in grasses, waves crashed against distant cliffs. From the village, a gasp broke collective, human. Then a cheer, ragged but unmistakable. Kilcara had found its voice. The guardian's form thinned, slumping into a drift of soil and lichen. Before it vanished, gratitude shimmered in its ember eyes. It pressed a hollow hand to the harp. Sap frothed across the yew, tracing new grains renewal. Then it was gone, leaving only the scent of rain on elderflowers. Podrick whooped, an adolescent yelp cracking the night. We laughed, dazzled by the sudden riot of sound. Above us, fairy lights danced one last reel, then zipped toward the horizon, where they stitched themselves into constellations I did not know. In the weeks after Imbolc, Kilcara woke like a sleeper from fever. Fishermen haggled on the pier. School children recited catechism under the stern gaze of Sister Mella. Dogs barked at gulls with ferocious relief. Music spilled from windows. Fiddles, accordions, bodhrans. Newspapers in Dublin ran headlines. Silence lifts in Clare mystery. Scientists blamed an acoustic anomaly caused by subaqueous basalt. The locals nodded politely while tuning their whistles. Fiona and I returned to the workshop. The enchanted harp, now named Guthna Grain, voice of the sun hung from a beam. Strings humming when daylight touched them, yet its purpose felt complete. The lights rarely visited. Life's ordinary noises satisfied them. One rainy afternoon, I asked Fionn, "Will you ever sell it?" He shook his head. "Some things you give away by letting them stay. Then what will you craft next?" He smiled, eyes kindled by embers. "A duet." I frowned, unsure. "Two harps?" He stepped closer, took my hands calloused from stylus work. "Not instruments. Us." Before I could protest that I lacked pitch, he placed my palm on the Bogu soundbox. Its wood trembled like a resting heart. "Songs need words and words need strings," he said. "Scholars gather stories, artisans set them free." I thought of how my voice wavered that night, rescued by his silent accompaniment. A duet wasn't two identical voices. It was conversation. "I'll stay through spring," I promised. "You'll stay as long as the story needs," he corrected gently. "The story is still unfolding." Each morning we walk the north field, where young hawthorn and alder saplings curl from soil that once lay cursed. Birds test new melodies among their thorns. Sometimes we bring the harp, let wind strum chords no human hand can match. Other times we bring nothing, only footsteps, laughter, the low murmur of two people discovering harmonies etched beneath everyday speech. I'm compiling Kilcara's revival for the journal Igsa. Footnotes bristling with cautionary tales about forts and turbans. Yet beyond academia, something else grows, a music neither of us thought possible. Fionn may never sing with his own vocal cords, but when I voice the verses, his instruments answer, and the space between note and echo becomes the place we both belong, where silence isn't absence but pause. Cupping the next phrase like a seed. On quiet nights, fairy lights occasionally return, hovering by the eaves. They seem content, as though watching over a song that no longer needs rescue. We leave the shutters open for them, just in case. Somewhere in the darkness, the guardian treads soft circles around its resurrected mound, antlers silvered by starlight, keeping watch so that Kilcara's voice, our voice, may never fade again.